Welcome and greetings everyone to another Destiny 2 theory video. Hopefully I sound a little bit better on the voiceover here since I am, as far as I understand, fully recovered from COVID. Everything has come out negative and stayed that way, so hopefully we'll be back on track, back on the grind, back with as much energy as we usually have. But today I wanted to focus on a piece that I mentioned in one of my previous videos whenever we talked about nailing it on the head with Maya Sundaresh being the conductor. Now, obviously we've seen the cutscene at this point where at first Saint, addresses her as Lakshmi instead of Maya Sundaresh, and of course she turns around and it is indeed Lakshmi's head. However, we know at this point, with the lore points from the Veil containment on Neomuna, and up until this point, and of course she announces herself that Lakshmi was always Maya Sundaresh the whole time. Lakshmi 2 was just a copy of Maya's consciousness, but now we are facing her directly as Maya Sundaresh, after we went over the lore page showing that either the full copy, the original Maya, was in the Vex network and assimilated, or Imsund 12, the copy, was the one to reach the Echo first, away from the other scientists in the Vex storage. Today I want to focus on one piece from the personal logs of Maya Sundaresh 12. And the reason I want to focus on it is because it gives us some insight into the first collapse, but it also gives us an idea that we may not know everything that there is to know about it. And that's strictly the point in the Polyphony book, on page 4, in Imsun 12, in the documentation where she's talking about that the Vex having documented every single thing in the past. Anything that they cannot change at this current moment, they have documented as history and they move on. They have no interest in the past. They document it. They stop focusing on it. They stop trying to change it. They don't care anymore. They move forward. However, that left free reign for Maya to go and look it up herself, to educate herself on the past that she never knew. And she focused on this Dark Age and First Collapse and then the Golden Age, and she put all of her effort and all of her learning into that area, which we then found out was the queries that were being run in the Enigma Protocol mission. So the part I particularly wanted to focus on is here in the page. The Vex documented it all, collected all they could smother their milk with. One human wrote about the day they stood on the edge of an abandoned dam and watched a swarm of small machines spew from an unseen scene in the Traveler. How Nezarek's ships turned day into midnight. How the years that followed hastened humanity's extinction, countries that turned to anarchy, then to feudalism, the art and technology we bled and wept to champion, abandoned as power grids failed and disasters swelled. Now, the reason I want to focus on this is because one of the things that's been kind of a continuous mystery among the Vanguard and among our journeys to planets is who has been piloting what pyramid ship that we keep finding on all of the surrounding planets. We found one on the moon, which has then introduced us to the Nightmares. And now we understand that that one from the moon has to have been Nezarek's flagship. It had to have been the ship that he was piloting, and whenever he was no longer around, after Savathun's betrayal, the Nightmares spilled out of the pyramid whenever it awoke, and now we have them. Now, noticing the Nightmares spreading to other planets like Nessus and all sorts of other, lost sectors that we had seen, one of the things that also confused me is we still don't know who was piloting the pyramid ship on Europa. We know that Rolk was piloting the one in Savathun's throne world, which we attacked and then disposed of Rolk, but we don't know about this one on Europa. We don't know who is piloting it. We don't know the effects that it necessarily had on Europa. We didn't see any direct effects. And now we are digging to the core of Nessus, but I've noticed that even with Nessus's changes, the nightmares still roam the lost sectors. Which then leads me to connect to this moment here, where, from my understanding, Maya is looking at one event. It is one singular event in the collapse that happens somewhat simultaneously. A human wrote about a time just before the collapse and the Dark Age, where they saw a swarm of small machines come from the Traveler. So they saw the ghosts being born and sent out into the world, but they also mentioned that Nezarek's ships, as in plural, turned day into midnight. Now with this, there's something that also reminded me back on Neomuna. When we were finding out all of the lore and all of the, back and forth with Maya and the Veil and everything like that, we know that somehow on Neomuna, they had the conversation with creating the Cloud Striders and especially the creation of the Cloud Ark, the way that Maya was able to convince and persuade people to put themselves into the Cloud Ark and bury themselves in cryotubes and keep their bodies alive and their consciences alive in the Cloud Ark, which is essentially just the Vex network, was the fear was used against them of the Black Fleet returning. And that was something that always stood out to me, is they are mentioning the Black Fleet returning again, showing up again. Now, of course, that did happen once we found and located Neomuna, but that was the fear that was kind of manipulated in order to get everyone to upload themselves into the Cloud Ark. And we know that from one specific entry in the book that was called Last Days. And it's even on the first page of Last Days that's labeled as Mr. Che. It says here, his class ranged from 4 to 7 years old, and some of them were smarter than he ever remembered being at that age, but none of them were ready to confront the idea of extinction. I know you've all heard the Pyramid Fleet is coming back. Blank stares. They knew the fact, but not the emotional weight it carried. The Pyramid Fleet are very bad people who might hurt us, so we're all going to go deep underground, where we'll be very hard to find, but there isn't a lot of room underground, and not a lot to do. So we'll all go to sleep and spend time in the Cloud Ark, so we can still learn and play with our friends. So, now we have an inkling here from a human in the Vexnet, and as a history piece that's been documented, that a human saw the Traveler being present at the same time of Nezarek's ships, which as far as we understand were pyramid ships. But now we also have identification in Neomuna's history that the Pyramid Fleet was there once before they put themselves into the Cloud Ark. So they knew about the fleet, they were aware of it, and so that's why they decided that the Cloud Ark was the best decision. Now, there are some other pages in there that reinforce this idea. There are some conversations between couples, between just individuals, talking about people who've already committed to going into the Cloud Ark, others who have not. But now, with these two instances, it starts to get me wondering, when was the Black Fleet here the first time? Were they the cause of the initial collapse? Were they the ones that showed up and the Traveler was here and did what it could, but the collapse was not due to the Traveler, it was due to this Black Fleet? And also, if the Black Fleet was here before, why did they leave? Why were they gone? But it also explains why part of the fleet was so close. Because when the Traveler fought back, early on in Destiny 2's history against Gaul, and send that blast across the universe, the Pyramid Fleet was not far, but they were asleep. And then they awoke. So, my theory is that Nezarec did come and attack the humans at first. That's why we have so many lore pages about Nezarec in the Dark Age, specifically. He was the cause of that collapse. He was the cause that sent us into those dark ages, and so the legend stands of Nezarec, the god of nightmares, the final god of pain that we fought and defeated but did not kill. I still believe that Nezarec is out there. The nightmares are still present. They have not disappeared from any planet that we've been a part of. But also, when we defeated him in his raid in Root of Nightmares, he was still taunting us, talking to us after he perished. He wasn't gone, but he's still talking. So, I think that that's probably why we have so much history with Nezarec, but that also means that these pyramid ships have been here far before we ever knew. They've been around, they've visited Neomuna, they've been on Europa, they've been in Savathun's throne world, they've been on the moon, and they were buried on the moon, and they were rested on Neomuna. There wasn't kind of an event that we knew of, we just kind of found them and located them. Now, there is some theories that I have that also lead to kind of a scarier idea that since there is so much mystery around Elsie and the Drifter, that possibly Europa, one of those pyramids, did belong to them, and they are not as friendly as they seem. But my theory is, moving forward with Echoes, that whatever we're digging towards the core of Nessus for could be another pyramid ship. That could be what Maya is trying to flow all of the radiolaria into. She is trying to assume the position of the Witness in a way, but she has her own pyramid ship that she can flow all of this knowledge and power into, and then create a self-sustaining army, essentially. She can create a Vex army and use the ship to her own devices, but that would also explain her obsession with going into it and flowing all of this radiolaria to then travel the stars. She would need a ship. She would need somehow to launch or propel all of this radiolaria and all of this knowledge into the universe with her. She wouldn't be able to just spew it into space and hope for the best, because that was her plan originally with the Exodus ships. And we see how that's turned out. So with the previous success of that, I believe that she's definitely looking for a ship. Now, obviously this is just a theory at the moment. I'm just going off of context and clues that I've seen from other lore pages and connections I've been able to make. If you guys know any other lore pieces that might debunk or, reinforce the theory, I'd love to hear it in the comments just to have that conversation. Let me know if I've kind of surprised some of you with the connection back to the lore pages from Neomuna and how much Neomuna really has connected a lot of this web of Maya and Shioma and everything like that. And let me know what you think about the theory. Do you think we're also headed to another pyramid ship, or the leftover pyramid ships that have been maybe part of Nezarec's army that were just left after the first collapse? Or do you think the collapse was somewhat of a symbol of us needing a restart, our need to start over, and maybe that's what Destiny needs and what we're looking forward to? Other than that, though, hopefully I will be fully recovered and we'll get back to our normal videos without a ton of cuts and a ton of me, dying with my voice. And I will see you guys in the next video.